For years, decades even, people who are watching this channel didn't know at times when Georgia's next game would be, as close to 6 days from the time that they play it. When will Georgia play Vanderbilt? What time will it be? Will it be at night? Will it be at noon? Will it be at 3:30? That's all going to come to an end by the time you see this video, or shortly after you watch this video, depending on when you watch it. What's happening is the SEC, now that it has an exclusive agreement with Disney, can space out its games better. And they've already done that at Georgia. And I'm going to show you a couple of things along the way. And once I start clicking on the screen, you know, sometimes that doesn't go so hot. But we already know this. We already know there are 4 games that Georgia's playing on ABC already this season. As we mosey on over to Dawg Post, we know Georgia-Clemson is at 12. We know Georgia-Kentucky is at 7:30. We know Georgia-Alabama is at 7:30. We know Georgia-Florida is at 3:30. All those games were predictable. Perhaps Kentucky at night, was a little bit, not predictable. But you're talking about probably the number 1 team in the country playing its first conference game. It makes plenty of sense. We already know Georgia plays 4 games on ABC. We already know that. For the record, this Tennessee Tech game I'm highlighting, that will be a digital game that will not be available on regular television. You're going to have the ESPN Plus or SEC Network Plus package to be able to watch that game. You've been warned now. So that means Georgia controls that kickoff. We will know that on Thursday for sure. We will know the first 3 and 4 weeks of the SEC schedule for sure. But what we will also know, and I'll put it on the screen and then I'll mosey on over to ESPN to show you better, is what about Auburn? Georgia-Auburn has been a huge game for decades. It is the Deep South's oldest rivalry. What about Georgia-Texas? When will that game be? Or when will that game not be? What about Georgia-Ole Miss? What about Georgia-Tennessee? Here's the important part, as I'm going to switch over to ESPN site and show you what I'm talking about. You're going to now know, I'm going to focus right now on Georgia-Auburn. You're going to now know when that game won't be. And that will actually help out a lot. If ESPN and Disney say, we know that game's not going to be at noon, they can say that. And as I flip on over to ESPN, why is that the case? Well, Disney controls all the games now. So Auburn, Georgia will almost certainly be on ABC. The question is, what else could possibly knock it out of prime time? I'm talking about Auburn, Georgia. Let me get right to the screen. Keep in mind that the other teams that that Disney completely controls is the ACC. So Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington. This is a pretty good week in the Big Ten, to be honest with you. Those are some killer games. UCLA, Penn State. There's a lot of games to go up against that weekend. In the SEC and the ACC, Georgia-Auburn is at least the second best. It might be the best game. But you do have Clemson, Florida State hanging out. I would imagine that Florida State, Clemson will be at night. But we'll just see. And what would that mean for Georgia-Auburn? Well, we don't know. The fact that they're picking these games early, that they were picking these games a couple days before June, means to me that Clemson, Florida State has a pretty good shot of being late at night, which means probably Georgia-Auburn will be at noon. But let's just see. Now then, once you fast forward a couple of weeks, and I'm skipping all the Big 12 games. So that's the other league that Disney and the ACC that Disney has control over. Is they've got the ACC games. So Georgia Tech, Notre Dame is also the same week as Georgia, Texas. Well, as powerful as Notre Dame is, there is 0% chance that Georgia Tech is going to go over Georgia. Okay, in terms of the matchup of Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Texas, Georgia. Georgia Tech is way down on the list on that front. So I'm just kind of quickly looking here at the other SEC games. We will know on Thursday. The SEC will let us know that the Georgia-Texas game will not be at noon. Okay, that's what's going to happen. In the Big 12, which is the other game, and to be straight up, I don't know which of these games that Disney controls. They probably don't yet know them. But like Colorado, Arizona, that's going to be a game that, that's going to be a game that Disney is going to put on. The question is what time, and that will be on ABC. I would imagine, they're just going to say, okay, we want this game. That will probably be the 3:30 lead up to Georgia, Texas at night, because I'm just looking at this, and then the ACC real quick. You got a lot of trash from the ACC that day. It could be that Notre Dame Tech is the 12 o'clock, and you roll into Colorado, Arizona at 3, and then you have your nightcap of, Georgia, Texas. Or it may be that, you totally can say, no, we're just doing straight SEC the whole day. We're going to go, and there's another big game that I think, all due respect to Deion's effect at Colorado, they're not going to jump Alabama, Tennessee. They're not going to jump Georgia, Texas. My guess, just now looking at it a little bit harder, is that you'll probably have Notre Dame at noon rolling into Alabama, because you're not going to play a 9 a.m. kickoff time in Arizona. So you're going to have, or 10 a.m., whatever it is. You're going to have Alabama, Tennessee at 3:30. You'll have Notre Dame, Georgia Tech at noon, Alabama, Tennessee at 3:30, Georgia, Texas at night. Now you could have the opposite of Alabama. The Bama, Georgia could flip on that front. But the key point here for y'all and for me, selfishly, is we're going to know more. If you know that Georgia's playing Texas at noon, that changes the math a lot for people like me. I would have committed burglary. I would not have murdered anyone, but I would have committed burglary to know when Georgia was playing at Missouri and when Georgia was playing at Vanderbilt. Those games, for me, those are flying games. And I want to know when they are. I want to know if I need a hotel that night. Which night do I need a hotel? Because I'm not doing 2 nights in Nashville. I'll do 1, and that's enough. It's too close. It's not that, you want to go in and out at Vandy. Well, Georgia's not playing Vandy this year, but you can. They are doing y'all a huge favor by saying, we know Georgia Auburn is going to be, at night, for instance. Well, that changes or it very well is going to likely be, we know Georgia Auburn is not at noon. And so then the university can schedule things. Then, all sorts of things come into play when you know particular things. I'm just looking at the week of Georgia Ole Miss, because that certainly could be a night game. I'm just looking at the trash from the ACC. Florida State at Notre Dame, but they don't control that. That will be an NBC game. Clemson, Virginia Tech doesn't have the firepower. And just real quick on Big 12, which I don't know if we don't know what the rules are. We know the rules are, but I don't know who gets what each year. It's a whole weird thing, I have to say. And the Big 12 just doesn't have great matchups. Colorado, Utah. Is someone in Kentucky going to watch that game? Or are they going to watch? This week of Georgia at Ole Miss, you got some firepower that week. Okay? This is the Saturday, November 9th lineup in the SEC. You've got Florida at Texas. You've got Georgia at Ole Miss, and you've got Alabama at LSU. So either Georgia's playing at 11 o'clock in the morning at Ole Miss, or it's playing 3:30. Either Florida's playing at 11 o'clock or they're playing at 3:30 at Texas. It's one of the two. And then Alabama, LSU will be at night. The curious thing here is the biggest ticket, and this makes sense a little bit, is Georgia Ole Miss by a lot, by almost let's just say $75. And that is not an insignificant amount of money in terms of percentage. So that's another thing is, they just can roll together triple headers, like the next week. These are great games. Here's another triple header on ABC. I don't know what will be at night. I have my suspicions what will be at night, but I'm not going to say. Well, yes, I am going to say. that weekend in the SEC, and I'll look at the trash in the ACC real quick. Just like you can't have Clemson, Florida State every week. That's the problem with the ACC is you don't have, there's not a lot of great. And I'm just looking at it, it's not great. But this triple header on ABC, like all of these are ESPN games. Would be old CBS games. All of these three I'm gonna mention: Texas at Arkansas, LSU at Florida, Tennessee at Georgia. All three of those are primetime games. You could put all three of those games in primetime. I mean, you could put all of them in primetime. Now, that Georgia ticket is double the LSU at Florida ticket, and it's almost $100 more than Texas Arkansas. It just tells you, even with a massively larger stadium than Arkansas, and with an old rival coming down, Georgia Tennessee is a non-insignificant game. I mean, I will add this, and I know the people at the SEC office have done a great job. They are getting underpaid. They're delivering huge value for what they're delivering. They're giving them triple headers every single week. Look at this one. This is the week later. This is when Georgia plays UMass. Like nobody's going to go to that game in Athens. You got Alabama at Oklahoma. You've got A&M at Auburn, and you got Ole Miss at Florida. Those are all great games. Nevertheless, and I mean, nobody's going to line up for this one, but Missouri at Mississippi State, Kentucky at Texas, like when those are your trash games, I just don't even know what to say about it after a while. And then you've got, the final week of the season with Tech and Georgia, you've got, and these are all now controlled by Disney. You've got Bama, Auburn, Florida State, Georgia Tech, LSU, Oklahoma. Oh my God. You got the Egg Bowl on a Saturday. You got Carolina, Clemson. You got Arkansas, Missouri. You got Texas A&M. You got A&M in Texas. However you say it. I don't think those. I mean, there's no CBS. Hey, we want to do this. No, there's no Friday CBS from the SEC's perspective anymore. So you could see, the Egg Bowl has not been announced for Thursday night. That's where it's been for a while. So I would anticipate that the Egg Bowl gets moved. I would anticipate that, I don't know what Georgia would say. I think Georgia wouldn't mind playing Tech on Friday. But wouldn't mind is not the same thing as they're asking to do it. Someone is going to play on ABC on that Friday. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Fox is going to have this Nebraska-Oklahoma and Nebraska-Iowa thing. That's such a bad game. But the global point is, if you want to know when the Tennessee game is, you might not know exactly when it is, but you're going to know, well, it's not going to be at noon because we're not going to put it at noon. That is a great service and massively overdue for the SEC. Congratulations to the fans.